For 3 decades, one man defined late night. He wasn't just a host. He was America's midnight companion. Every laugh, every pause, every raised eyebrow became part of the country's bedtime ritual. But here's the part almost nobody knew. Behind the famous smile, he was guarded, sharp, private, hard to read, even for friends. Thousands of stars sat in that chair, but only a handful ever broke through the armor. A private list. 9 guests who weren't just entertaining, they were unforgettable. Not because of their fame, not because of scandal, but because they gave the host something he rarely found in television: freedom, joy, truth. And once you hear who they were, you'll never see them, or him, the same way again. Number 1, Lucille Ball, the hurricane of comedy. When Lucille Ball stormed onto Johnny's stage, everything changed. The band played sharper, the audience leaned forward. Johnny's whole body loosened, like he'd just spotted an old friend. Lucy didn't arrive to be interviewed. She arrived to take over the room. She thrived on chaos. 1 second, she's balancing on cables backstage. The next, she's pantomiming pratfalls so crisp the crew nearly drops their gear. Even during commercial breaks, Lucy never stopped performing. Johnny loved control, but with Lucy, he loved losing it. She reminded him why he fell in love with comedy in the first place. On air, she was a storm. A story about a rehearsal disaster would suddenly twist into a physical gag. Johnny's next question? Gone, and he didn't mind. Because watching Lucy meant watching lightning in a bottle. Here's the part viewers didn't see. After the camera stopped, Lucy stayed. She thanked the lighting crew for making a redhead look human. She signed napkins for interns. She told nervous researchers to just try stand up once. Johnny noticed all of it, because to him, talent wasn't enough. Respect mattered, care mattered. That's why Lucy was special. She didn't just make Johnny laugh, she made him free. Number 2, Bob Hope, the prize fighter. When Bob Hope came on The Tonight Show, it wasn't an interview, it was a sparring match. Johnny didn't write questions. He wrote setups. The opening jab. Hope? He countered like a champion, sharp, clean, relentless. His lines weren't scribbled last night. They were sharpened over decades. Golf jokes, tour jokes, political zingers, each one polished until it gleamed. Johnny loved that economy. Hope never wasted a word. He swung, connected, and the crowd roared. Off camera, Hope was the same. He arrived early, traded golf stories with Johnny, chatted with crew like old pals. That respect mattered. Most stars came for the spotlight. Hope came for the game. And on air, the chemistry was electric. Johnny would toss him a softball. How's the tour? Hope would knock it into the back wall with a line about airport food, then pivot into a zinger about his own act, leaving Johnny with that sly, grateful grin. Hope's humor wasn't mean. It wasn't soft either. It was clean steel, a roast that never drew blood. That balance, exactly what Carson craved. Because with Hope, late night didn't just feel funny. It felt professional, crafted, like 2 pros in the ring, respecting the fight. Number 3, Jack Benny, the master of silence. Jack Benny didn't enter with a bang. He entered with a pause, slow, unhurried, almost daring the room to wait, and the room always did. His greatest weapon wasn't the punchline, it was the silence before it. Benny could raise an eyebrow, shift his head a fraction, and the audience would collapse before he even spoke. Carson studied him like scripture. Johnny himself was a craftsman of timing. But Benny moved on a clock no one else could hear. He turned waiting into laughter. On set, Carson threw him softballs. "How's the show going, Jack?" Benny would hold. The crowd leaned forward. The band froze. Then, finally, the line. And the laugh wasn't big because of the joke. It was big because Benny made everyone earn it. Backstage, the precision continued. He asked stagehands to lower his stool by an inch. Not for comfort, but for rhythm. He'd trim a single word from a cue card so the beat landed perfectly. Comedy wasn't chance with Benny. It was architecture. Carson respected that more than he could say. Plenty of stars were funny. But Benny built an environment where comedy was inevitable. That was the secret lesson Johnny carried forward. If you respect the audience, you give them time. And if you master that time, you own the laugh forever. Number 4, Ella Fitzgerald, The Gentle Storm. When Ella Fitzgerald stepped onto Carson's stage, something shifted. Not louder, not flashier, softer, warmer, more alive. The band locked in instantly. The audience leaned forward. And Johnny, he stopped hosting and started listening. Her voice didn't just hit notes, it carried history, pain, joy, entire lifetimes inside one phrase. And when she scatted, the band answered like old friends finishing her sentences. Carson adored precision, but Ella's precision wasn't mechanical. It was human. Every breath intentional, every pause deliberate. And behind the curtain, no diva demands, no walls of assistance. Ella greeted the sound engineer, thanked the makeup artist, asked interns how their week was going, and meant it. Johnny noticed. He always noticed. In a business built on ego, Ella's humility was her superpower. On the couch, she spoke quietly, about the road, about listening before singing, about musicians who shaped her. Carson didn't push. He didn't need to. The music had already said everything. When she finished a song, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of grace, full of truth. That's what made Ella unforgettable. She didn't just perform. She built a space where the audience could feel safe to feel. And in that space, Johnny found rare peace. Number 5, Dean Martin, the chaos artist. Dean Martin never entered a room. He slid into it. Tie loose, drink in hand, grin that promised chaos. And chaos was exactly what Carson loved. Dean didn't follow the script. He tore it up. He interrupted Johnny mid-sentence. He teased Ed McMahon until the audience howled. He rambled, he stumbled, and somehow, he always landed the punchline. The secret? Confidence. Dean wasn't afraid to look foolish, because he knew his magnetism carried the room. Even mistakes became the act. Carson, the man who usually protected his format like a fortress, loosened up. With Dean, The Tonight Show wasn't TV. It was two friends in a bar swapping stories, with millions eavesdropping. Backstage, the same energy pulsed. Dean winked at the cameraman, toasted the crew with an empty glass. Mischief everywhere. Generosity in disguise. Johnny respected that spirit. Dean reminded him of something vital. Television didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be fun. And when Dean sauntered off, leaving laughter still echoing through Studio One, Carson would lean back, grinning, as if to say, "Thanks for reminding me not to take myself too seriously." Number 6, Jimmy Stewart, the Heartbreaker. Jimmy Stewart didn't enter with power. He entered with humility. Slow steps, shoulders stooped. That familiar, gentle drawl softening the whole room. Carson's usual rhythm was quick, sharp, always ready with a quip. But with Jimmy, Johnny fell silent. Because Stewart brought something almost extinct in Hollywood. Sincerity. He told stories that sounded simple. A small-town neighbor, a war memory, a funny mix-up in an airport. But every story landed with heart. The kind that makes you lean in without realizing. Then came the moment no one forgot. Jimmy brought a poem about his dog Bo. He read it slowly, voice cracking, hands trembling. The audience went still, and Johnny Carson, the man who rarely cracked, did. His eyes welled, his throat caught. For once, the host famous for control showed raw vulnerability. Afterward, Johnny admitted privately, Jimmy Stewart was the most genuine man ever to sit in that chair. And that was the truth. Backstage, he greeted crew like neighbors, Remembered names, asked about families, no ego, just decency. For Carson, Jimmy wasn't just a guest. He was a reminder of an America that felt steady, grounded, human, and that reminder was priceless. Number 7. George Burns, the gentleman comic. George Burns didn't chase laughs. He invited them. When he walked on stage, it wasn't with flash, it was with assurance. Cigar in hand, glasses perched low, a sly grin that told you he'd seen this joke 100 times, and still liked telling it. Burns practiced comedy the way a craftsman polishes silver. No rush, no strain. He'd pause, smile, take a slow puff of his cigar, and then drop a line so clean, so neat, you could hear the click of the punchline sliding into place. Carson loved that elegance. Most comics swung for laughs. Burns made laughter feel civilized. Behind the curtain, the class continued. He greeted the security guard by name, shook the hand of the prop master like an equal. He'd tap a stagehand on the shoulder, whisper a one-liner like a tip, then keep moving with a nod. By the time he reached Johnny's desk, the whole crew felt taller. Carson noticed. Always. On the couch, Burns treated conversation like a waltz. Johnny led with a question. The road, vaudeville, the shift from radio to TV. Burns followed with grace, never stepping on Johnny, always collaborating. The brilliance was in the architecture. Every glance, every breath, every afterthought was another brick in a structure that felt effortless but was built with invisible precision. And when the segment ended, applause didn't explode. It swelled. Not release, gratitude. That's what George Burns left behind. Comedy wrapped in courtesy. And Carson admired him because he proved that funny doesn't need noise. It just needs class. Number 8. Sammy Davis Jr. The Spark Plug. When Sammy Davis Jr. hit the Tonight Show stage, it felt like electricity entering the building. Johnny's grin appeared before Sammy even spoke, because he knew. Chaos, rhythm, and magic were about to happen. Sammy never sat still. He danced in his chair, tapped drum rhythms on the armrest, slipped into impressions so seamless the audience gasped. In one breath, Sinatra. In the next, Bogart. In the next, Jerry Lewis mugging like a cartoon. Johnny didn't try to top it. He just leaned back, smiling like a fan who couldn't believe his seat. But here's the key. Sammy wasn't just sparkle. He was generosity. Backstage, he wasn't Sammy Davis Jr., the legend. He was the guy teaching a stagehand a new dance step, joking with interns about their ties, balancing a hat on his nose just to ease the tension before a tough taping. He lit up every room. Not just the one with cameras. Carson once said, Sammy could light up Burbank without a plug. It wasn't just a line, it was fact, because when Sammy left the set, he didn't just leave a show behind. He left a memory, the kind of memory that reminded Carson what entertainment should feel like. Alive, spontaneous, joyful, and shared with everyone in the room. Number 9, Betty White, the queen of timing. Betty White didn't demand attention. She earned it with a smile. The moment she walked out, the audience leaned in, because they knew. This wasn't just America's sweetheart. This was a razor-sharp wit disguised as warmth. Johnny sat up straighter with Betty. He knew she could match him, line for line. He'd toss a sly setup. She'd flip it and send it back sharper than before. Her humor had bite, but never blood. She could tease Johnny's ego, poke fun at late night's boys' club, or slip in a sly joke about power, all while making everyone feel included. Carson trusted her, and trust is rare in live TV. He could take risks, go weirder, push harder, because he knew Betty would catch it. Off air, she was just as brilliant. No rushing for the exit. She stayed, talked to the stage manager, thanked camera operators, remembered interns' names. Once, a sound tech mentioned his dog was sick. Weeks later, Betty came back and asked, How's your pup doing? That was her secret weapon. Memory, care, decency. The crew adored her. Johnny valued her because he measured people not only by their punchlines, but by how they treated the people nobody sees. With Betty, The Tonight Show wasn't just funny, it felt good. And for Johnny Carson, that was the highest standard a guest could reach. So why these 9? What made them different from the hundreds of stars who sat in that chair? The truth is, Johnny Carson didn't care about fame. He cared about craft. Lucille Ball showed him that chaos, when it's fueled by heart, becomes pure joy. Bob Hope proved that clean, disciplined writing could hit harder than any stunt. Jack Benny taught him the power of silence, that sometimes the biggest laugh comes from waiting. Ella Fitzgerald brought humility to genius, making The Tonight Show feel less like television and more like music. Dean Martin reminded him not to grip so tightly, that looseness could be its own kind of brilliance. Jimmy Stewart cracked his armor with sincerity, showing that real emotion had a place on live TV. George Burns wrapped comedy in elegance, turning a joke into something that felt like good manners. Sammy Davis Jr. lit up the room with joy, lifting everyone around him, not just himself. And Betty White balanced bite with grace, proving you could be sharp, funny, and kind all at once. Together, they gave Carson something he rarely admitted he needed: reassurance. That The Tonight Show wasn't just about ratings or monologues or celebrity gossip. It was about creating a room where laughter, kindness, timing, and generosity ruled the night. When Studio One exhaled after a perfect segment, Johnny didn't count the laughs. He savored the moments that felt true. Moments you can't fake. Moments that still echo decades later. That's why these 9 mattered, not just to Johnny Carson, but to television history. And now it's your turn. If you could book one of these guests every week, who would it be? Would you choose Lucille Ball, the hurricane who made Johnny lose control, or Jimmy Stewart, the only man who ever made him cry on live TV? Maybe Sammy Davis Jr., the spark plug who turned every visit into a celebration. Or Betty White, whose timing was so perfect Carson trusted her with anything. Drop your pick in the comments, and tell us the one clip you'd show someone who's never seen them with Carson. Because here's the thing, late night has changed, but those moments, raw, funny, unfiltered, still set the standard for what television can be. If this trip through Johnny's golden age hit home, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell, because next time, we're diving into the guests who should have made the list. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.